Hello. Today I want to talk about Uber and Lyft driving hours of service versus truck driving hours of service. Uber and Lyft have recently added hours of service to my area. I know they've had it in some areas for a while now, and I've had a chance to look at some of the drivers' comments on it and how they feel about the hours of service. A lot of them are kind of complaining, but I think it's kind of a joke. It's not really. It's nothing compared to what truck drivers have to do. The hours of service for Uber and Lyft do vary depending on your location. So let's look at Uber first. For Uber, in my area, driving on the app is limited to no more than 12 hours at a time. But it doesn't count when you're offline or when you're stopped in between trips. Then after that, you only need to go offline for 6 hours and then you can start all over again. It also says it will notify you 2 hours, 1 hour, and 30 minutes before you reach your time limit. And if you're on a trip when you reach your time limit, they do allow you to complete that trip. And I think that the fact that the time stops when you're in between trips and when you're offline, it really makes this really lenient. Now let's look at Lyft. Lyft actually lets you drive a little more. Lyft, you must take a 6-hour break for every 14 hours that you're in drive mode. But just like Uber, it's not consecutive hours in drive mode, so it's not as soon as you turn it on, 14 hours later you have to be off duty for 6 hours. It's 14 hours when you're actually driving. So that's it. They both require you to have a 6-hour break, which I think is kind of a joke. I don't think that's much of a rest at all. I know most drivers wouldn't want to hear that, but I personally don't think 6 hours is enough to get you enough rest for anything, especially after a 12-hour, more than likely more than a 12-hour day. Now let's look at some of the rules for truck drivers. The first rule is you're only allowed to drive 11 hours without taking a 10-hour break. And also, you can't go over 8 hours on duty without taking a 30-minute break. That 8 hours includes everything from your pre-trip inspection to driving to fueling to everything that you have to do involving the truck. So you basically have to take a 10-hour break before you can start your day, and at some point during your day you have to take a 30-minute break. And that's the thing I've been preaching about the Tesla Semi. The 30-minute break is pretty much mandatory for all truck drivers because of the way the rule is written. And if the truck can charge itself enough to allow you to drive 11 hours a day, then it could possibly be an over-the-road truck, assuming you have enough chargers. And finally, after being on duty for 14 hours, you have to take a 10-hour break and you can't drive anymore. Now what that means is, even if you didn't drive your full 11 hours, if you've been on duty, like from the moment you started, and 14 hours have passed, you can't drive anymore. So if you got stuck unloading or loading or in traffic, unless you use an exception, and there are some exceptions, these rules are a lot more complicated than I want to get into, but that's generally the rule. I'm just saying, Uber and Lyft drivers, just, take it down a notch. It's not that bad. And I know people are going to say that these are 18-wheelers and they're more dangerous and they should have stricter regulations, but I think no matter if you're Uber or Lyft or any trucking company, the goal is to have your drivers on the road sleepy 0% of the time and to kill 0 people while driving on the road. And I would agree that it is more dangerous to be on the road sleepy in an 18-wheeler just because of the sheer size of the vehicle. But the reality is, if an accident happens, someone's going to go after the company. They're not necessarily going to go after the driver, because the company, whoever has their name and logo on the back of the trailer, that's who has all the money, and that's who's going to get sued. And when it comes up in court, you know how many hours your drivers are driving. Why are you continuing to let them drive? And for Uber and Lyft, it would be, how many hours that person is driving. Why do you continue to send them ride requests? So that's all I have to say about that. If anything, they'll get more strict for Uber and Lyft drivers, particularly if you have an accident in your area. I would expect a knee-jerk reaction from local politicians to tighten up the rideshare hours of service rules. Okay, so here's a look at just how big of a joke the Uber and Lyft driving regulations are. Most drivers use both apps. You can switch back and forth so you can kind of cheat the time. And they know that drivers use both apps because they have rewards and things to try to keep you on their app and to stop you from switching back and forth. On this particular day, I drove on Saturday from about 4:30 a.m. until 4 p.m. It was an extremely busy day. LSU was playing Ole Miss. It was pretty much non-stop the whole time. I did take like 2 30-minute breaks, one to charge the car, one to get something to eat. But other than that, it was non-stop. Now at 4 o'clock, when I was done and I was completely tired, I was on my way home, I noticed I still had about 6 hours left to drive just with Uber. And I couldn't find the one with Lyft, but I would have had about 6 hours to drive with Lyft also. So I could basically do this and drive non-stop with Lyft and Uber.